The biggest story of the week was, of course, the midterm election. The marquee races for governor, senator, they went to the Republicans. A red political tide was running in Florida. That has many saying that the state has moved from a swing state to a red state. But has it?
Well, the answer to that appears to be yes for the foreseeable future. Florida Democrats' uphill climb is now even steeper. Election night gave Republicans a supermajority in both chambers in the legislature and a juggernaut governor who swept to re-election with historic numbers. For the first time in recent history, Miami-Dade County voted for a Republican governor.
The poor showing by Democratic candidates almost across the board around the state has led for calls for the resignation of State Party Chair Manny Diaz of Miami. And this morning, he blamed the National Party for failing to provide any money. We invited Mr. Diaz to be a guest on the program. He declined.
So how do Democrats plan to have a say in the direction of the state? What is the plan? State Rep Fentrice Driskell is a Democrat from Tampa who is the House Minority Leader Designate incoming. Fentrice Driskell, great to have you on This Week in South Florida. Congratulations on your re-election. And you now have one of the toughest jobs in Tallahassee.
Good morning, Glenna. Thank you so much for having me. And don't worry, I'm used to tough jobs.
Yeah. So let's start out then by saying, you know, I don't know you well, but we've met. You strike me as a really positive person. What is the initial plan?
Well, you know, I think there are a few things we have to remember. First of all, Democrats have been in the minority for quite some time in the Florida legislature and certainly in the Florida House. So we know how to do this. We know how to continue to speak for the people who sent us there to speak for them. And so we will do that. We will continue to get the job done. We will focus on those issues that matter most to Floridians, including, you know, access to affordable, high quality health care, making sure that we focus on affordability, whether that's affordable housing or also trying to bring down the cost of property insurance and keeping our communities safe from gun violence. We will continue to focus on all of those things, but at the same time, we have to figure out how to get that message out to voters better. We do great work, we have great people and great policy ideas, but I think what this election showed us is that we have to do a stronger job of getting that message out to the people.
Yeah. Fentrice, Michael Putney here. We're meeting for the first time. Great to have you on our show. Great to speak with you. So about the leadership of the Florida Democratic Party, it's changed, I think, 5 times over the last couple of years. And Manny Diaz, a friend of ours from Miami, former mayor, has been the chairman. But I just, you know, you've heard these calls for his resignation. Should he resign as the chair?
Well, I think the structural issues that exist in the party right now existed before Chair Diaz, and they will exist after Chair Diaz unless we come together as a party and get some plans together around 2 things. The first is partisan voter registration, and the second is year-round engagement in communities across the state, and particularly in communities of color. That is what we have to solve for, regardless of who's chair.
Well, one of the things that came out of Tuesday night that and I think surprised a lot of people is that fewer Democrats voted this year than in 2018. And, you know, there was, I want to talk more about what Chair Diaz had said in a memo to party leaders, basically what you just said about money and engagement. But where was the engagement in certain communities, if you can pinpoint? And with so much on the line this time and so much division, what do you expect happened to make them not turn out?
Yeah, I mean, I think that our national partners certainly let us down in terms of not investing in Florida. And Florida is a state that you have to invest in. When you look at our prior statewide races, they've all been close except for this one. So then that makes me think, okay, what was so different about this one? Well, the difference was Governor DeSantis. He had a $200 million war chest. He spent about $100 million of it. This was the most expensive gubernatorial race in American history. And so the Democrats, yes, we put up the best fight we could with the resources that we had, but when you're getting outspent 10 to 1, it almost doesn't matter, what you try to do. In politics, you certainly don't have to have the most money, but you need to have enough resources to be competitive. The other thing is, when you look at Governor DeSantis and his policies, he, in my opinion, has been such a divisive figure in Florida politics. He uses these boogeyman issues, whether it was the Don't Say Gay bill, or he drives these wedge issues like abortion, when really that's not what Floridians need, right? Like, people are concerned with kitchen table issues, and they're concerned that their rent is going higher, property insurance is way too high. And somehow he has this Teflon where he's able to avoid owning those failures. And he does need to own those failures. He has been the governor for 4 years and has done nothing about those two issues. But he focuses on those social issues that drive Floridians apart. I think it had an impact on the Democratic base. I think people felt discouraged and demoralized. And to that extent, his plan worked.
Can I just push back on one thing you said? I heard the governor talking about those kitchen table issues and blaming the Biden administration for the economic failures. I think that was the message that I heard. I think in South Florida, and probably in your neck of the woods too, in the Tampa area, whenever the governor or any of the Republican leaders would speak, the message was about freedom, free state of Florida. And people hear freedom in different ways, obviously. He pushed freedom from COVID restrictions or freedom from socialism when he speaks in Miami. But that was, I think, a defining message that we find on the campaign trail, where it looked like Democrats really had, abortion for a time, and certainly Charlie Crist made that his priority. I'm wondering if you think that that kind of messaging really missed the mark this time.
Well, that's what's so unfortunate, because if you were to speak to any of my members, the members of my caucus in the House, they will tell you that Florida Democrats believe that every Floridian deserves the freedom to be healthy, prosperous, and safe. We've made a concerted effort with our messaging around that, because freedom is not an ideal that any party owns, right? It's an American ideal. We talk about that freedom in terms of good policies to make people's lives better. And what I mean by DeSantis kind of having this Teflon, he says freedom from COVID restrictions. Everybody forgets that Ron DeSantis also shut the state down. He shut our bars down. We had COVID restrictions as well. When he eased up on those restrictions, the only reason that I think the state made it through is because there were brave local county commissioners and mayors who did have some mask restrictions in place to try to keep us safe at the time when the COVID-19 pandemic was raging. So I do think that Democrats have been talking about freedom. Somehow Republicans seem to have a louder message than we do. But again, they tend to win the war of propaganda. One last note to make, it's so interesting that they have been blaming the Biden administration for this. First of all, the inflation issue that we're experiencing nationally is not just unique to America. It's an international issue. The second point is that Florida's economy was really in trouble. We were facing a budget deficit of over $10 billion, I think, in the state until President Biden sent federal resources down and allowed us to have the largest budget in history. So a lot of this credit that Governor DeSantis has been claiming is, in fact, due to Joe Biden sending federal dollars here. And I don't think a lot of people realize that.
Yeah. Fentrice, let me ask you to look ahead for the next legislative session, where you will be the leader of the House. The state Senate president designate has already said that she is going to introduce a heartbeat bill that would create a limit for an abortion at 6 weeks. Number one, do you expect that to happen? And number two, what will you and the Democrats do to try to stop it?
Well, yeah, I do expect it to happen, whether it's 6 weeks or 12 weeks. And we tried to warn the people of Florida about this and tried to hold our Republican counterparts accountable, because we knew that they would do this, but they refused to talk about it during election season because they know that it's unpopular with voters. And in every place in the country where we saw abortion explicitly on the ballot, including Kentucky and Kansas, which are far redder than Florida, the voters rejected it. So they're trying to sneak it in now because they know that it would be unpopular with Floridians. I think they should really exercise caution, because that just might be the type of overreach that is their undoing. In terms of what the Democrats will do, we'll do what we always have, which is to try to stop that bad bill from happening, try to put on some amendments where we can to try to soften the bill and make it less harmful to the people of Florida. But should this happen, this really is something that the people of Florida will need to pay attention to, because the Republicans are starting to show who they truly are. They do not care about your freedoms. In fact, they want to further restrict them and take them away.
Yeah, well, we will all be paying attention, and we thank you this morning for your time. You're a big star in Tampa. Now you're sort of getting to be a big star in South Florida.
Great to have you.
Thanks very much, Fentrice.
Thanks, guys.